Olá, bom dia pessoal. Eu sou Alexandre Soncini, um dos cofundadores da VTEX e vou conduzir essa apresentação do Paul hoje. A apresentação vai ser em inglês, então vou refazer o aviso. Quem quiser pegar a tradução simultânea, é bem aqui em frente, do outro lado ali do pavilhão. Pode pegar o radinho de tradução simultânea, tá? So I'm gonna switch to English, and today we're going to have a presentation talking about unified commerce and composable commerce. I had the opportunity to be at the AWS reInvent event in Las Vegas this year, and I saw Paul's presentation, and it was amazing to see all the content that he was able to bring to us there. So we decided to invite him to come to VTEX Day and to talk about the topic. So I want to call to the stage Paul Fryer. Thank you, Paul. Paul is the global CTO for retail and CPG at AWS. So I will leave him to the presentation, and at the end, if we have some time, we can do some Q&A as well. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Alex. So hi, everyone. It's good to be here. As Alex mentioned, I'm the global CTO for retail and CPG industries at AWS, and what that means is I basically have a team of solution architects around the world that focus on retailers and CPG brands, and a lot of what I do is bring back a lot of patterns to. Let me make sure we got the right content on here. It's okay? So I'll just keep talking. How's that? Does that work? So what we wanted to talk today about is composable commerce. Okay, so we see a lot of customers wanting to do this composable commerce journey. And, you know, VTEX is a great partner of ours. That's why we're here. A lot of customers will just use a partner. Some of them will just use, go about it, build a lot of things on their own. Let's see if we can get this one working. I think can we move one forward? Somebody, well, can we get the AV? I think they're still working on the AV. While they're doing that, I'll just keep going. So what I wanted to talk about is, like, how do we think about composable commerce at AWS? And okay, well, here's a slide. This is one way that we kind of frame up a lot of what we see from customers, how they're thinking about composing applications that are riding on top of capabilities, okay? So when we talk about capabilities, we are talking about everything from storage to your enterprise systems or enterprise technical debt to retail-specific services that are built around forecasting and personalization, loyalty, etc. But we see a lot of customers wanting to expose all of those capabilities as services. And that's what we wanted to talk about today is basically how customers are doing that. And they're basically using microservices, or you may hear headless commerce, right? That's the pattern that we're seeing. And so we have platforms like VTEX emerging that a lot of people are coming to, and they're building right on that layer right there. But the most important and sort of differentiated part of the brand is where they're doing customer experiences, right? So where the customer is checking out, or the mobile experience. And so we see a lot of our customers wanting to focus their time and resources on the customer experience. And then all of the other stuff that it takes to run an e-commerce site or even a physical retail site or physical store is increasingly kind of not their area of interest. It's something that they prefer to just buy from a vendor, or sometimes they'll want to integrate into some back-end system that they have. So these are some of the challenges that we hear from customers, and I'll let you kind of read some of these, but at a high level, there's a real need to provide a holistic shopping experience across channels. So really what every brand that we talk to or customer in retail wants to do is be able to have a session that's maybe starting on mobile or online, but it should also be available in the store, and your associates should know about it. And so this whole thing about cross-channel session awareness is something that a lot of companies are trying to do, but it's very hard because the systems in the store are often different than the systems online. We also see a lot of sort of point solutions out there where people are assembling different software from different companies to kind of fill out their stack. And it's usually like 12 or more systems that we see that are from different vendors, from like your order management to your loyalty to your payments to your et cetera. And so we do see sort of a spectrum of customers that have a lot of legacy debt and a lot of systems. And then if they acquire other companies, it's even more complicated. And then finally, there's this idea of generational decisions where maybe traditional software providers will make you do a really big deal. And that deal is going to be so expensive that you're going to want to leverage that investment for 2, 3, 4 years before you make any changes off of that. And that makes you kind of risk adverse. You want to basically stay the course, and you're not really in the mode to experiment a lot. So what we have been thinking a lot about is this idea of a converged composable commerce strategy. And what we mean by converged is really thinking about your commerce strategy as both your online strategy, but also your store strategy for those companies that have stores. And so we're really thinking about how can we have the point of sale experience ride the same rails or the same services as your e-commerce experience. And so that's how we're thinking about services that fill out your portfolio in e-commerce. And so this is kind of how we consult customers that are going down this journey, is we encourage them to think about an orchestration service or a place you do orchestration. And that's where you compose the different capabilities that you have in your stack, and you make it specific to your business, because your business may have something so specific in that checkout process that you need that customization. And so, maybe you're doing stitching on your apparel, and you need to check if the material to do the stitching is actually in the fulfillment center. That would require a custom workflow for a checkout, and that's where we see the value of an orchestration engine coming in. So you can do those kinds of things. And then you want to use microservices, right? So that's how you expose all those capabilities. So you would expose your inventory, you would expose your payments, you would expose all of those as services or primitives that you can orchestrate over to create those experiences. Mock architecture. So, Mock is an organization of e-commerce aligned companies, and we're part of that. AWS is one of the largest sponsors of Mock. So we think that this philosophy is very well aligned with the Mock, principles. And then finally, I'll say that the one thing that we are also thinking a lot, and we're sort of helping customers on, is thinking through how they do their software development or SDKs. And I'll talk a little bit about that in this presentation. So without getting into too much detail, I do want to just talk a little bit more about the converged composable commerce. And what do we mean by converged? Well, if we just take the idea of services or microservices, let's say payment services. Payments need to happen in the cloud, but they also need to happen at the edge or at the store. So we're thinking about the store, in this case, as an edge node where you can deploy software. And in this case, we are looking at the store compute. And we, at AWS, have basically a spectrum of solutions that you can deploy to a store. Everything from hardware, you can actually rent the hardware, to actually just using your own hardware that you already have, and you can install an agent, which is where we have the ECS agent. That's a elastic container service. And so that's basically a container endpoint where you can deploy containerized workloads. So what we're proposing with this architecture is containerize your services, make them available in a way that they can run in the cloud, but also on-prem. And it sounds easy to say, but of course the implementation details are a little tricky. Not all capabilities would necessarily be able to run in a local mode, but some of them would. And that's this is an example of some of the architecture that we're seeing with customers wanting to move towards a more like service-oriented store where they can deploy services that can run locally. And the biggest reason for that is networks go out. Networks go out all the time, and they got to keep accepting payments. They may even need to look up pricing information. They may need to look up product data. So there's a lot of services that we hear are very important to run locally in stores. Okay, so this is kind of like just a shock and awe slide. It's actually some of the services on AWS. It's not all of them. I think we have 240 now. And the reason I show this is because one of the things we try to help customers with is how do they learn from some of the things that AWS has learned over the years. And one of them is operating a lot of services at scale. So if you're going to go down this approach of exposing all of your capabilities in your business as services, you want to make sure you're doing it on a platform that supports APIs and SDKs. In AWS, this is a little behind the scenes kind of how we do it. We have actually open sourced this service definition language called Smithy. And this is how we define our service contracts in AWS. So, if you think about the S3 service, there's an S3 Smithy document or a DynamoDB Smithy document. And those use an SDK code generation process to generate our SDKs in Java and Python and .NET. All of those are generated based on these models. And the reason we do that is because it takes a lot of it creates consistency, and we're able to apply things like consistent security, identity access management, and just best practices to our SDKs. And then if I pivot a little bit towards thinking about not AWS services, but capabilities that you would expose as a retailer, this is how we work with customers when we want to help them think through what capabilities do they need. And so, like, what are they looking for in a platform, or if they're going to go and build it on their own, what does it need to expose? And so we have kind of a sense of the different personas in an organization, like marketing or an engineering leader or somebody running the website. They have different basically metrics or objectives that they're trying to optimize. That might be, I want to increase basket size, or I want to increase, or I want to decrease the speed at which I'm deploying new features. And so there's a whole bunch of use cases that kind of drive workloads. So if your objective is to increase your basket size, you may say, I need to personalize my website. I need personalized search. I need personalized product detail pages. I need to drive personalization. And that might result in workflows of basically re-ranking your search results, or making sure that you have personalized recommendations on your recommendation service. So those workflows are something that we break down into a set of actions that are part of a capability. And that capability would be basically the microservice that you see. So it might be search, or it might be personalized search, or your product detail capability. And so those capabilities are something that you can think about it just at a business layer for your brand or your e-commerce site. And then you can say, well, what provider can provide those? VTEX can provide a lot of these capabilities. Their stack is literally organized around capabilities. But you can also go and build them your own, or you can plug them into your existing system. And there's a lot of ways to do that. But at a high level, this is sort of the development process we see for defining your capabilities that you want to go after and develop. And then I'll give a couple examples of workflows, a little more specifically how we think about these. So if we take the use case of a point of sale and we want to reduce shopping friction, the checkout is essentially a workflow we could work on. And so the workflow would be something that you would be designing in your workflow engine. So whatever your workflow engine is, this is where you would say, this is sort of the business process for doing a checkout. Like, first we need to lock the inventory so it's not available for sale. Then we need to check for risk, fraud, and then finally we need to process the payment. And this is an oversimplified workflow just for demonstration purposes, but you can see that the whole workflow itself has been designed in a way that could actually be used in different geographies. So we work with a lot of companies that like the idea of defining a canonical workflow over a canonical set of APIs and being able to basically work at like an enterprise level to prescribe these best practices for their enterprise and then give these patterns or frameworks to their different teams that operate e-commerce sites in different markets. So in Brazil, they may actually power inventory by a particular provider that might be different than the inventory provider that's being powered in Europe. And having this sort of canonical model is what we're calling basically your APIs that you can plug into providers is really helpful for this type of thing. Because you can say, well, we're going to design our workflows, we're going to design our applications around our standard set of services, and then those services are pluggable to different best-in-class capability providers. And we can change those per market that we operate in, because we can just deploy a separate instance of our API to that market, and that instance can be wired up to a different set of providers. And so here's another example of personalized search, where you may actually run this through a workflow that's first searching your search provider, which could be Elasticsearch or Angolia, or insert your favorite search engine here. And then you can re-rank those with whoever is really good at re-ranking search results. We have a thing called Amazon Personalized that can do that, but the point is you can plug in whatever provider makes sense for you, and that's the whole point of the architecture, is to make the providers pluggable, and so you can leverage best in class. And then finally, this is sort of a little bit more of a technical example of a workflow engine, because we're talking about, well, you're going to need a workflow engine to do orchestration. And you're basically orchestrating over your web services. If we look at this checkout workflow, this is basically literally what we're doing here is we're calling API gateway to get product count and then lock inventory. An API gateway is it's an API gateway on AWS. And so this is like, if you were going to go and build this stuff directly on AWS, this is one approach you could take. The other thing you'll notice mixed in here is we're also raising events. So if a payment was successful or if a payment failed, we will raise an event and put it on an event bus. And that way, other workflows or other capabilities that are interested in that can respond to that in an asynchronous way. And so there's a lot of work around event-driven architecture that customers are increasingly moving to and becoming interested in. And so that's a very, very kind of hot topic, especially for our more, I'd say, advanced e-commerce customers. They're thinking a lot about how they use events. Okay, and then finally, I have to talk about generative AI, because it's required, right? But I will tell you a couple of places we're seeing generative AI used for this type of service development. One is actually asking models how you should build a service definition. So you can actually say, I want a service that helps at checking people out very fast, and it needs to ask for their t-shirt size and all these things. Like, you can basically describe the experience you want And that can be and I'm oversimplifying here, but that can be translated into a model that you can then use to actually build your SDKs and do everything I was talking about. So your whole development pipeline can become increasingly sort of driven by your requirements. Your business document, your business requirements document essentially can be an input to your model generation for your API definition. And then once you have your SDKs built, you need to integrate them with some provider. That provider has an API. VTEX, all of their stuff is exposed as an API, so if you were to put an SDK on top of that, you would integrate with that. We see generative AI as a very useful tool for building that integration code. And we've actually, at Amazon or AWS, we've been building things like Amazon Q, which can actually be part of your DevOps pipeline. You can ask it to go and do the integration. It'll do it. It'll check it in. There's a feature request that you can, as a human, you can review. And so it's basically increasingly AI is becoming part of the SDK or the CI/CD pipeline process. And then finally, we also see generative AI being used to power mocks of our services. So if you release a new service and you want to immediately mock it, meaning have a synthetic implementation, you can actually use an LLM to basically, quote unquote, process a payment or return search results without actually wiring it up to any provider. It is sort of a provider, if you will. So those are three ways we've been seeing in the composable commerce use case. And those are all built on Amazon Bedrock, which is our basically middle platform for integrating with best-in-class LLMs out there. Now, I know we are running up on time, so I think I want to just do a recap here, and then maybe we'll do a little Q&A. Yeah. So the recap is basically we're trying to leverage knowledge that we've had, not just from Amazon, but also from our customers globally that we work with, and kind of, we're working backwards from customers to build a lot of these patterns and constructs and consulting patterns, and then bring in the right marketplace of partners to enable customers. Stores is something we're continually looking at and sort of trying to bridge that gap between online and physical. Now, migration strategy is also something we help with customers a lot. It's sort of breaking down how you want to think about your capabilities, which capabilities you want to go after first. We have a whole assessment process called the capability assessment process, where we can help you think through what capabilities you're okay at, you want to get better at, and then how would that look in terms of bringing on a provider or a partner, or building your own, or using professional services. So we have that migration strategy as well. And then it's all about just accelerating customer experiences, because if we can remove all of this undifferentiated heavy lifting, which was the first slide, that's really our goal, is to make our customers go faster and give more accelerated customer experiences. And then the last thing is experimentation. If you can get to the point where you can try different implementations of a capability, that allows you to experiment faster, because you have defined areas of scope which you can try without the risk of everything else breaking. And that's the whole point of pluggability. So with that, I'll see if we want to do some questions.
Sure. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much for the presentation. Let's see if we have questions. Anybody? Questions? Alguém quer fazer uma pergunta pro Paul? I'm going to start with my question, Paul. Let me come here, sorry. Let me step back and talk about composability. I think I see the last 15 years in technology basically summarizing 4 waves. We had the on-premises, then the software as a service in different implementations. Then I think headless came, and headless was the trigger for us to start to talk about composability. And in my opinion, the main reason why we did that, it's because the headless concept is amazing, but the cost is prohibitive. Like if you have the best of breed, you want to compose a solution with 15 different vendors, and you need to have this middleware layer that's going to be super complex and sophisticated to handle all those integrations, it increases a lot the cost. So composability came as a way to, if you are a retailer and there is some strategic decisions that you need to make, and you want to have the intellectual property of some parts of your system because it's important for you and for your strategy, then you can compose it and personalize, customize using the workflows or whatever. On the other hand, everything that is commodity, most of the time search is commodity for all the retail businesses, or checkout is commodity, or catalog is commodity. So for everything that is commodity, then you don't need to compose with the best of breed solution in the market. So how do you see that?
Yeah, couple things there. Like, yes, the whole thing around the platform or integrating with all of those different systems, and then an orchestration engine, all of that, if you're going to run that on your own, is a bunch of additional stuff you got to do as an organization, as a company, right? And so you want to use a platform for that. You don't want to run that yourself. Second, we see customers that want to integrate some of the systems, but you're right, there's increasingly more commoditized capabilities out there, like payments and search, and they're almost like a no-brainer. Like, we're just gonna procure that from a vendor, and so they want the flexibility to both get things from a marketplace or a vendor, but then also have the ability to integrate where it's like so differentiating for their business that they have to own the experience of that particular capability. Then they, in some cases, will need to just own that whole thing.
No, that's great, and I think. I always think about how to keep things simple. I think simplicity is the most complex thing for you to achieve, right? And as simple as is your architecture, as faster probably your project's going to be, as easier to maintain. So you need to find the right balance around how many third-party solutions you're going to integrate and connect versus what you want to achieve. But moving to another topic of artificial intelligence, AI, that you mentioned at the end of your presentation. What are the cases that you have been seeing mostly in the retail world that people are really using AI and leveraging AI eventually to also push this composability approach?
Yeah, well, I certainly, I mentioned the code generation stuff. That's actually really big. There's a lot of focus on code generation and just using agents as part of your CI/CD pipeline to basically offload coding tasks. Integration is a great use case. We also see customers wanting to do a lot of product development, a lot of personalization, actually. Like, people are starting to personalize the entire product catalog. So, based on your session, when you come into a website, everything from the images to the text, to the labels, to the recommendation, to the search results are all being personalized. And in some cases, that's generative AI, maybe for the text, on the copy. But other cases, it's just, ranking AI. That's a very popular one and emerging. And you're probably going to see that even more with images. Certainly, we're already seeing customers doing a lot with images, to the point where you wouldn't even know that, like, models are being swapped out, faces are being swapped out, clothing is being put onto other avatars, and it's all happening very fast, and it's getting really good. And then the next part is going to be video. Video is coming. It's not there yet, but that's going to be really amazing when you have super dynamic video on your product detail page.
Yeah, I to complement that, I have been seeing some retailers very excited to the opportunity of generating ads, banners, automatically for their campaigns, so they can run like better ads, more customized ads, all using AI. So that's great. That was a great conversation and presentation. I assume that you are going to be at the AWS booth for a while. So
I'll be there today.
If anyone wants to ask some additional questions, Paul is going to be there. Thank you very much, Paul.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's been great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.